We're in a complex time, but the reality of that complex time is it's so simple what the resolve is to it, what the answer is, but we keep overlooking it. And as I'm saying that, to give you a reflection of how I think a little bit, I can see in my own life how I'm doing that same pattern that we're doing in our world and our society. So I was sitting writing for a little bit today, and I wanted to share some of what I wrote. I'll read it and I'll riff and share what I'm seeing in our world to build a case for the work that I'm doing, which came out of asking the question, why don't all people thrive in our world? And truly, the other part of that is what is lost by not having and allowing all people to thrive? What's in the way of that? And also the question of if one could collapse narcissism, and this is the official home of collapsing narcissism, how would one do so? And I really looked at it with an open mind to understand, not from a psychological perspective, but from a position of if we don't know what narcissism even is, if we know what the characteristics are based on what we've experienced as an individual and such, but without any preconceived idea, if one were to collapse it, how would that look? And that's the core of my work. It's the foundation of what I do. And there are foundational definitions, which are in other videos, and I'd encourage you to go and take a look at those. One of them is the definition of the model. Another is the definition of the hierarchy. Another is the definition of personal knowing, and so on. Okay, so in my work, I share what's held humanity back from finding reasonable solutions to our world's problems. It's not a lack of funding for science. I mean, that can help, or a lack of education. It's a social construct that's been in place well before you or I were ever on Earth. And it's paved over us. Our world works when all people create where we live and what we do within the world. And that is a problem. And it sounds very altruistic. I am an altruist. I am an idealist, but not to the fault of not understanding what is complex in between where we are and where that altruism can become and take. I spent 22 years doing observational research, exactly looking at that. What is in between the two, and how do we move beyond it? A lot of things point to what we already know. Go inward, find who you are. But the problem is we can go ahead and do that, but we're re-traumatizing ourselves when we're not addressing what I term the model. And I'll just quick say it here, which is the control we assert to maintain or advance our place in the hierarchy. That's really important. The control we assert to maintain or advance our place in the hierarchy. A hierarchy does not work for humanity. It sounds so silly because you think of all these hierarchies that are out there and necessary hierarchies so that there's a chain of command and so on, but that's different. The chain of command is different. I know that I have this person having my back. I know that I have this person having my back. That's really about connection and about what people say. Everything's connected. That's that. That is not a hierarchy in the same way. A hierarchy is really a structure that is honestly destructive to us because it limits how we can think and how we can act. And that is what is not working. So in response to how does that look in our world, I'll go back to the simplicity. And I've said this in other videos, I'm certain. When we were babies, we were paved over again and again. So as a baby, we cried, we were hungry, we got fed, we had a wet diaper or nappy or whatever you are in the world, we got that taken care of. But then fast forward to being a year and a half or 3 years old, when our parent is tired, they are frustrated, they don't know what to make of something. And their response to us is to decide for us because they really don't want to figure it out, because they don't know to ask us the question or to tune into what they know inside to sense what that need is, even though they can sense that with us. They override it. And the reason they do that is our world is emotionally broken. Everybody is avoiding emotions. I say when I'm traveling right now, I'm in London, and when I'm out in the world, I say in the United States, it's my experience that if I say, I'm having this really hard time, what I experience from somebody else, even somebody I would call a friend, not all my friends anymore because I've really cleared that out, will say to me, I'm hurting more and here's how. Or I've had that same experience and here's what I did with it. So it's this applied, stop that hurt in her from coming my way. I can't handle it. I don't want anything to do with it. We aren't meeting each other and saying, I'm really sorry that that's happening. Is there a way that I can support or help you? That is coming from a tone and a place that's available. But that in our world today is so rare, and it's not your fault. None of this is our fault. The spiritual community will say, you created this, and that is toxic bullshit. That is not safe for us. And it's not an okay position for us to say, okay, this is my fault. What you're experiencing is not your fault. The other side of it is our problem to solve it. We're the cleanup crew. It sucks. I don't like it either. It fucking sucks. It sucks. But that is the situation is we are here because we're adept at understanding that we want love to exist and we want connection to exist to more than we want what we're experiencing, which is disconnection and malevolence. It's others controlling people, and it's a horror show on earth in some ways. If you really look deeply at it, it's so sad how broken people are emotionally, and that we accept that instead of actually dealing with it, instead of actually looking at it. So the point of all of this is we've been overriding, just like we were taught to pave over what we feel as a 3-year-old when you're told maybe you're tired or you're cranky, you're expressing something, maybe you just pinched your finger and the parent says you're just hungry. Right? It happens all the time. I see it out in public. I see it at airports. I see it at the market. I see it all over the place that we do this. And we don't think we do. And we're starting to take away that child's sense of what they know about themselves and tell them, I know better, in small little drips. And then I had a whole host of siblings. No offense to them. This is my experience. And I'm not saying they're good or bad. The hurt in my family was quite steep. And I'm the youngest by quite a few years. And so they'd already chalked up a bunch of trauma. And they're looking for somebody to place that upon. And there were 2 people in my family who they were placing that on. And they were doing it through knowing better for. I even had a sibling say, I know you better than you know yourself. Nothing could be more destructive than saying something like that to somebody who's a young person. And you might think, get over it. Don't be so sensitive. Absolutely not. If you're saying that, this isn't for you. And that's totally okay. Move on your merry way. There are plenty of places to be on YouTube. But if you're thinking, boy, she's on to something, or I'm feeling that a little bit, you're in the right place. You're with the right company. It's not that I'm too sensitive. It's that I can see what others can't see. And that, if you have resistance to it, that troubles you inside, but you're not ready for it. And who cares? Who cares? The beauty of that is, or the power and positivity of that is, certain people are here to hold the structure of what our world was. So everything doesn't fall apart at once and become complete chaos. That's a beautiful reason to not be attuned with what I'm up to. And people who are here who are saying, boy, I could see that too. I could see I felt different in my family. I could see that I felt things or sensed things others in my family would deny, that I'd bring it up and they'd say, no, 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 that's not right. But I knew it. I knew it. That's what I'm here to restore, is you do know. You did know when you were hungry. You did know when you pinched your finger, you needed somebody to kiss your finger, or you needed somebody to hold you. Our need is the problem. And that's why I say it's not your fault. Your needs are not a problem. But that's been what's in the way of all of this, is I can't handle you having a need because I have so many needs, because I have had so much trauma and being overridden myself. And to some degree, parents will come into this, and deep inside of them, when they start to pave over the child, they do that because in a way they're saying, if I don't get to have my own autonomy, if I don't get to know who I am, you better believe you don't either. But they don't even know they're doing that. And I used to teach parents, but they're so resistant. And it took me years to say, I backed away from it. I did it for a few years to say what's going on. And then I realized it's such a primary relationship and a reflection of who they are. It's hard for them. And we also don't accept that, really, in the truth of it, children are here as our teachers. We are not here as their teachers, but the hierarchy says we are. Logic says we have more experience. We've been on earth longer. We know what's what. But we don't allow that child's autonomy. Their experience with a pinched finger can be completely different than your need. Completely different. And we need to understand that in order to right that positioning. As a parent, when I figured some of this out, my children were very young. It was before my son was 1 year old, and so my other kiddo was not quite 3 or 4, and I kept melting down, and I didn't want to take that out on them. A few times I did. I'm not proud of that, but I blew, right? The anger was so great in me. I blew. And it was the example that I had was to blow. And so, but quickly, only that happened a few times, or that only happened a few times. And quickly I realized something is wrong inside. Something is not, I would never want to do that to my children. This is about me. And quickly after that, some parenting techniques came. And when I started using these two methods hand in hand, one of the books I'd read for 4 times every 6 months, I'd read it. And the last time I read it, I just highlighted certain parts so that if I needed, I could go back and use this as a resource. And the other one took repetition because it was like my work. It was so simple, but it was, and I'm not big on God or that, but to me at that time, I thought this is like of God. It means you're keeping the expression of the child alive within them at the full extent. And I thought this is a brilliant way to parent children. But the two partnered together over time allowed me to have every situation I knew what to do, which is what makes us a good enough parent. Meaning, if we don't know what to do, we buy ourselves time. We say, hey, I'm really upset about what happened here. I'm going to need to get back to you. And I'll tell you, when kids are experienced with a parent behaving that way, the kids will feel the weight of the emotion and the consequence of their own actions, which is part of the lesson. And when we get in there and say all the things, generally as a parent, the first sentence that comes out of our mouth is the right thing. And the sentences after that are not. That's about us. But if we say, Katie, I hated it when you did this, or, or we wouldn't say it that way. We might say, it scared me when you, and that's correct. But then after that, we will leverage it into what is the model of maintaining or advancing our place in the hierarchy. And that's not okay. I'm going all over the place. I'm going to just move on to a different subject a little bit and see if we come back to this other one. But religion is in a hierarchy, and that's the problem with it. I grew up in a Christian religion in Catholicism, and I came to see, and I also studied religion as my minor in college, but I came to see, not that I'm a Jesus follower anymore, right? But I believe, that presence was an astute understanding of the human condition and the human experience. And I believe what Jesus was trying to say is, you are also the sons and daughters of this greater thing that I am too, the son of, and I can make water into wine, and you can too. That's what I believe. And that was coming out of China many years prior, of this idea of healing in the aspect of what is quantum and what we can't see or articulate. So to me, what made it really not work or not be what it was originally set up in my mind to be and in my perception is because of the hierarchy. Women are of service to the men in Christian religions. Well, that's not true. Women are the creators. we're pretty tough ass, right? We don't need you to protect us or take care of us, but we need opportunity to be able to really express ourselves so that we can contribute to the world in the way that we are built, not I say working for the man, not going and getting the job that you think we should have so that we can contribute to the family in the way that you think that we should. And I'm not saying that men aren't thinking this. I'm saying that's how the world is set up, is you do the thing you're supposed to do. And this is what happens. But the problem is that hierarchical situation, we might call it entitlement, where certain people have an advantage to be able to do that and earn and have family vacations and do all the things, but others don't. And the hierarchy is what gets in the way. So the result of my work at the end game, when we come outside of the model and release control, and we heal ourselves through the inner child, and we release ourselves then from our shadow, is natural equality. And I'm not going to explain that so much here because it is really worthy for another video. I may have explained it a little bit in another video. But that is powerful. And as I've said in another video recently, that mirrors our solar system, actually. Is what we've been doing is mirrors what people thought the solar system was about from a way that they presented it. But where we're headed is to emulate how the solar system actually works, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, it validated my work at one point where I said, oh, it's already in process. It's already showing us the way, right? Instead of this avoidance loop, we're meeting this thing, which now has become quite scary. But when we do all that inner work, there we have it. So I'm going to go back a little bit to the spiritual community in that this, you created this toxic. And the other thing is, when we look at that from a position of the spiritual communities, just pray, just do these things, that's all well and good, and there's nothing wrong with it. But the other piece of it is, where I see we're headed is well beyond that. We won't even do that anymore. We won't meditate or yoga it up or anything. That's an outmoded modality. And so it's not to say there are times I do meditate, but I know when, and I know what I need. I might meditate for 2 hours one afternoon, and then I don't again for 8 months or 6 years. We're going to be able to move further away from those modalities, because when we find the home within through what we know, where we were when we were a child, right? So simple. We know when we're hungry. I mean, I went through a massive period of years where I couldn't even sense if I was hungry or not. And I know somebody would want to comment on here, well, it's because you did have low stomach acid, or you had low, but that's the problem. Don't tell me. I've been through that experience. I know what the experience was for me. We don't need to solve and preemptively share all the information we know. What we're doing when we do that is we are saying in my work, I am so hungry to be seen. I am hurting so badly that and I need connection so badly that I'm going to tell you what to do, because then I will have some perceived connection with you. And you don't have a perceived connection with me. You're telling me, which is posturing in the model. You're vying for a place in the hierarchy. And that posture comes through several ways. On the authoritarian side, it's through boasting, telling, proving, and withholding. And withholding is really, in this side of the model, avoidance. I'm not going to look at any of this. It's the parent who the child fell and scraped their knee. And it's that moment where the child is sensing in, what do I do? And the parent says, you're fine, stand up, brush it off. And the child feels afraid of the tone and unsure, I don't know what to do now. My nervous system's kind of like, whoa, but we're not going there. We're not going to fricking go there to the nervous system. And we've got to regulate. Absolutely not. If you're into that, this is probably not your lane. If you're questioning why we're doing that, this is your place to be. And if you're curious, this is your place to be. This is for curious people, right? I'm a forward thinker, and I'm not here to say something is right or wrong, but I'm telling you that is not our way out of this, is regulating and thinking our nervous system. Life is not a science. Stop comparing all of our life to a science. Life is an art. The child right there that fell had this instant moment of knowing I'm tuning in to this flash experience that I had that I don't know what to make of it. They're already having a nervous system reaction, which is absolutely what's supposed to happen. That is the nature of who they are, right? It's the art of their life. And they make that choice from there, and that's their power. But when the parent disrupts that, the authoritarian overrides it. The authoritarian's positioning is shut up, stop it, don't do it, because I don't want to see any of my trauma. I will thwart you and do whatever it takes to not see any of my trauma. And the reason they do it, I call it narcissistic social disordering. The reason they do it is they had a need gone unmet in a way that scarred them so deeply, they shut it all down. And as an example, when I was younger, I mean, I was at home, probably between 9 and 15 years old, 2 times. Well, yes, between those ages for sure. My mother, who is a narcissist, would thwart. And there were 2 times that I said something that is absolutely, undeniably true. Like this, the dress is gray. And she'd fight and fight, and I'd say, the dress is gray. That wasn't what I was saying. I was saying something in relationship to what she was fighting through. Just an obvious thing that was like, you can't deny it. It's so evidently true. Anybody would say that's what's true. And I kept saying that the dress is gray. Calm, mild, until she fought it out like a bucking horse that had to not want the saddle or not want to come into this. I don't want to say the saddle because I wasn't trying to train her. I was really trying to see, without knowing it, how to let her out. And that's what happened. She eventually said to me, crying, which she never would do, the dress is gray. And she'd state what's true. Like, I am so wrong here, or I've wronged you. She could come out. So that's how I knew there's this need for extraordinary levels of safety for the narcissist. But the other thing of it is, well, and then I did it a second time, and the same damn thing happened. And what I saw visually, because I'm clairvoyant, is her solar plexus, so the area that where the rib cage opens up, that squishy spot, is a brick wall broke. I could see it visually break away and crumble a bit. And then just as soon as she came out of it and realized and said it and cried, she went back in. And that's fine. It's not a problem. It taught me what I needed to know, and that's all I needed to know. I'm not there to save my mom. I'm not there to help her. I'm her child. She can figure it out on her own. She can educate herself. She can make that choice and tough through what it takes. I tough through decades. It's gonna make me want to cry. Decades of really intense healing work. And I moved intuitively through different experiences. I had 4 times in my life where I needed to empower myself at a really tricky, deep level. She could have chosen it, right? My father too. I mean, they could have chosen it. They did not. And that's not okay. So, okay, my head's like, ooh, all these things that I want to say. Oh my gosh, there's so much to say. The potential of this is that we collapse narcissism by healing ourselves and stepping out of the model. And you know these people. I just said it in another video. You've met people who they know, and they're quiet and calm and with themselves without any effort because they know. Because they know. They didn't work for that or push at it to stay in that space and the place that they are. They're with themselves. They're grateful by nature because they know, right? They've learned how to stay out of it, stay out of the model. And when we leave the model, many of us, I believe, will leave the model in the coming years. That does not, it disallows the tension that the authoritarian needs to continue their shenanigans. There's nowhere that they can connect at all, or really it's not connect because they can't at where they are. But they don't have anything on which they can put these hard, heavy, traumatic emotions onto, right? I know watching this, if you're somebody who is married to somebody who's narcissistic, particularly if you're a woman, or some men, like a highly sensitive man, a creative man might fit that bill, that you have felt like they were thwarting, and then they felt guilt, like they should be the one feeling maybe guilty. Not that that's a good thing, like that we shouldn't feel guilty, but they maybe had some guilt going on and they place that onto you. And we can say, well, I'm an empath. Nope. Nope. If you're an empath, you're identifying with the victimhood of, I can't figure this out. I feel everybody's emotions and it's too much for me. Get in your power. When you get in your power, and that you can fight through that. That can take years. That's okay. But when we start identifying away from that somebody can put that on us, because yeah, we take it in when we are powerless. But when we have our power, it just slides right off of us. And that's the importance of leaving the model. And that's my work. That's why I spent all these years looking at. So I'm going to quickly tell you about the other side of the model. And this model is shaped like a triangle, kind of, because there's one point, like a metronome for a piano, and it swings back and forth. And that's why we continue to miss how we come out of the model, because we're so busy swinging back and forth that we're in a constant state of avoidance that we don't even realize. But the other side of the model is people like you and I. If you're still hanging in there watching this, it's the enablers. And no offense to us. The reason we do and are motivated to behave on what we behave on in the way of enabling is because we were hurt so badly. But the difference between being hurt so badly and becoming an authoritarian versus being hurt so badly and becoming an enabler is we don't want anybody else to hurt like we did. So we do everything in our power to make choices for them, just like the authoritarian. Do you see? That's why we're swinging back and forth, but we're doing the same dang thing. Make choices for people from our own perspective so that they don't hurt. But they are going to hurt because they're not knowing themselves. We're taking that away from them. We're not letting them live out their natural consequence, which means we're not allowing them to mature and grow up. Right? I'm not trying to pick a fight here, but the bro club on earth is pretty extreme. I've been around in the world and I see it, where it's these men who are kind of they're helpless because they had no consequences as a child. And they think they're like the king. They think that they're just the top of the world and they can say anything and do anything. They haven't done their research. They haven't figured things out. So when they speak, you realize quite quickly this is not founded, or they might cling to things that they keep repeating. It's not founded information. They're aiming at, I'm bigger and better, but I don't have to put in much work because it's just known that I am. That's the other side. It's the model. It's knowing I know better for you than you know for yourself. You're going to take my facts because I know you don't. That is the model. So on the enabler side, let's get back to it quickly here. There is guilt and drama and worry and withholding. But in this side of the model, the withholding is ruminating, overthinking, leaving a party and saying, shit, I shouldn't have said that. Oh my gosh, my gosh. That's all signs when we posture in either side of this that we are with the wrong people and in the wrong place. And it's just going to continue. And I'm not saying cut loose from all of it, but if you're listening to this and you've been thinking about cutting loose from some relationships because you're just sensing that just doesn't feel right, it's something is wrong here, this is your wake-up call to say, yeah, recognize you belong someplace else. And that was a great training ground. Yay, you learned it all. You felt all the whatever you need to feel, pain, frustration, fun, elation, all the things. But it's time now to look at where I actually belong, is how you could put it. Where do I actually belong? And my work is about coming home, which I feel like I've never really had on earth. I actually bought that ring to remind myself to come home. So that's what we're aiming for. And I also am an intuitive. And years ago, when I started reading, I learned quickly that we are here, many of us, did not create a life and say, okay, I want to go do that. What I saw is we're chosen to come, not that we're special, but it's because we have the skill set to do this. That's it. We have the skill set to do this. And that we wouldn't back away from the fierce flame of it until we replaced, or I'm going to say displaced, this model and this overriding and this churn, and where our world has gone quite off the rails into something that isn't good for us. It's like we're living off of the highest levels of addiction in some way, and displace that with humanity's expansive expression. And it's easy to say, we just need to love, but that is foolish. Because if you are a child who never experienced what being loved is, it was all conditional once you really looked at it. This is a very hurtful thing to say. Or if it's like people say, you created this, I'm going to go back to that, and you've been sexually assaulted. Do you know that's really almost an impossibly steep climb to hear somebody just cavalier say that? It's not founded information. You created this. How you're telling me that you know for me, and they don't. And it's not that people don't have information to share and that they don't have things that are important. It's really differentiating the relationships that you have that are telling you that way, well, you created this, or it's feeling off-putting to you, and you're hanging in there for a scrap of connection instead of cutting loose and feeling the pain or whatever, the loneliness, the emotions, the anger, the frustration, the things that you are necessary to feel and move through to move out of. I always want to give credit. That way of saying that is from Michael Brown from The Presence Process. He's written a really great book, and it is about meditation. It's a great book, and he's a great thinker in our world, in my eyes. So we're moving through to move out of those emotions, and we can't do that within those relationships, because what happens is we can do that work, but we'll end up finding on the other side of it, we feel even worse in time, because we're coming back to the same relationships that fed the thing that is hurtful to us. And yet we're trying to make these things inside of us feel supported and healed and safe. And then we're bringing it right back to the thing. So when we, in this era, it's not just about boundaries in that way of, I'm going to say this to you and put you in your place. In time, that can be, we might come back to those relationships. But for now, we might need to step away and take a break to be able to heal up and then see if that is or is not for us. And that's where we move into natural equality. Is that for me or is that not for me? From where we are inside the model, super impossible to figure that out. It's really hard to figure that out in many circumstances in our life because we're not clear. There's muddle, right? There's a muddle in there. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that this has supported you. Please like, share, and follow. Tell your friends who are highly sensitive. I also have writing on Substack called Dear HSP, and the other one is The Future of Our Past, and I recommend you check those out. I think that they're supportive. If you like what I'm sharing, share those with others too. All right, thank you.